The morning sun cast a golden hue across the cul-de-sac, where manicured lawns and symmetrical flower beds gave the illusion of tranquility. Adrian Walker stood on his front porch, sipping coffee from a chipped navy mug that had survived 2 tours and more than a few kitchen accidents. He wasn't the kind of man easily shaken. Years as a military investigator had taught him patience, awareness, and the importance of keeping calm when others lost their heads. But even he could sense the tension brewing just beneath the surface of Oak Ridge Estates. It had been nearly a year since Adrian moved into the neighborhood with his teenage son, Tyler. After losing his wife in a car accident 2 years ago, Adrian needed a fresh start, someplace quieter, safer. Oak Ridge had seemed like that place. Gated, clean, well-reviewed, and family-oriented, according to the brochure. It was supposed to be the kind of place where his son could just be a kid, again. And for a few months it almost was. Adrian and Tyler had grown closer through the pain. Mornings started with banter over burnt toast, and evenings ended with movie nights, action flicks mostly, Adrian taste. But Tyler had grown fond of them. Tyler was 15 now, smart, grounded, a little sarcastic, but respectful. He loved riding his bike, tinkering with electronics, and throwing a football in the front yard with his dad. Their bond was real, stronger than most. But peace didn't last long in Oak Ridge. The Homeowners Association, an ever-watching presence with clipboards and passive-aggressive emails, seemed to find fault in everything. The first letter came when Tyler left a soccer ball on the lawn overnight. Violation of community standards. Then it was the shade of mulch Adrian used in the flower beds. Non-compliant with aesthetic policy. It was ridiculous, petty even. But Adrian let it slide. At first, then came the warnings. The HOA security patrol, 2 men in oversized sunglasses and tactical vests, began making appearances near Adrian property more often than coincidence allowed. They'd parked down the street, watching. Once, Adrian caught one of them snapping photos of Tyler while he was riding his bike in front of their house. That was the first time Adrian. Instincts whispered, something's off here. He tried reaching out to the HOA board, reasoning with them. If there's an issue, he'd said, I'm happy to talk, but don't harass my kid. Their response was cold and curt. All actions are within protocol. That word, protocol, echoed in his mind like a warning siren. Adrian didn't show it, but the pressure was building. He wasn't a man who ran from trouble, but he also didn't go looking for it. Still, something about the way the security guards stared, how the rules seemed to shift depending on who you were, it didn't sit right with him. He started documenting everything, printing emails, saving videos, noting the exact times of their patrols. Old habits from his military days kicked in. He was preparing, just in case. Tyler, ever observant, picked up on his father's tension. You think they'll back off? He asked one evening, eyes fixed on the motion camera feed from their doorbell. Adrian didn't answer right away. He glanced at the monitor, then at his son. I think they'll try something stupid, he said finally, voice low and steady. But they don't know who they're dealing with. Outside, the sprinklers clicked on across the street, misting the roses in a perfect arc. Oak Ridge looked peaceful on the surface, but Adrian knew better. Storms always start with stillness. Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to hit that like button, share it with friends, and subscribe for more awesome content. And while you're at it, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. All right, let's keep going. It started with a notice about the grass. Adrian had trimmed the lawn just 3 days prior, meticulous as ever, edges crisp enough to impress any landscaper. But the letter in the mailbox claimed otherwise. Height exceeds HOA standards. Must be corrected within 48 hours. It was laughable. Still, Adrian chalked it up to a simple misunderstanding. Then came the second notice. This time about Tyler's basketball hoop, a portable one he wheeled onto the driveway after school. The letter cited visual clutter and warned of fines. Within the week, 2 more citations landed, one for a garden gnome Tyler had bought as a joke, and another for sidewalk chalk drawings that would have washed away with the next rain. It wasn't about rules anymore. It was personal. Adrian could feel the heat rising. He'd dealt with bureaucracies, interrogated hostile suspects, and diffused more tension in a day than most men in a lifetime. But this was different. These weren't criminals or enemies. These were neighbors with too much time and a twisted sense of control. And someone, somewhere, had clearly decided the Walkers didn't belong. Tyler became their favorite target. One afternoon, as he practiced skateboard tricks near the curb, a black SUV rolled up with the HOA's security insignia barely visible under the dust. A heavy-set man with a buzz cut leaned out of the window, his mirrored sunglasses hiding his expression. "You can't skateboard here," he barked. Tyler, confused, gestured to the empty street. "I'm not in anyone's way. Community Regulation 4.7. No skateboarding in public-facing areas. You want me to write you up?" Adrian, watching from the garage, stepped forward. "He's not harming anyone," he said, voice calm but edged. "There are no cars, no pedestrians. He's 15. Let him be a kid." The guard narrowed his eyes but didn't argue. He drove off without another word. But from that moment on, Tyler was watched. Even music on a Bluetooth speaker became a point of contention. A guard approached him in the yard, claiming the volume was disturbing residents, even though their closest neighbor was 3 houses down, and the speaker barely reached past the driveway. Adrian tried again to be civil. He called the HOA board, asked for a meeting. He came in wearing a button-up shirt, file folder in hand, voice steady. "We're not trying to cause problems," he explained. "But this targeting of my son, this harassment, it's not acceptable." The board president, a smug, silver-haired man named Dale Connolly, barely looked up from his laptop. "We enforce the rules equally," he said, a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. "If you and your son can't respect that, perhaps this isn't the right community for you." The dismissal was deliberate, and Adrian recognized it for what it was. A provocation. A push. But they didn't know who they were pushing. Later that evening, Adrian stood in his home office, staring at the growing file he'd started building. Copies of all the violation notices, printouts from the HOA's own handbook, photos of the guards, some clearly overstepping their bounds, others just loitering far too close to his home. He didn't say much, even to Tyler, but the silence was full of calculation. He opened his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he landed on a name, Sheriff Don Alvarez. They hadn't spoken in a while, but Adrian knew the man well. Served together in their early days, built a trust forged under fire and long nights. He didn't make the call yet. Not just yet. But the number was there, highlighted now, almost glowing on the screen. Adrian closed the folder, locking it in the drawer. Outside, the sound of sprinklers returned, masking the quiet tension creeping through Oak Ridge. He looked out the window at the street, where the same black SUV had just rolled by for the 3rd time that day. They were watching. So was he. Tyler had started walking their golden retriever, Max, later in the evenings, partly to avoid the summer heat, partly to escape the ever-watchful eyes of HOA security. But even under the soft glow of the streetlights, he never felt truly alone. One evening, as they rounded the corner near the community's retention pond, Tyler noticed the same black SUV slowly creeping down the opposite side of the street. The windows were tinted, but he recognized the silhouette of the buzz-cut guard from earlier. He tried to ignore it. He wasn't doing anything wrong. But Max seemed to sense the tension, pulling a little closer to his side, ears perked. When he got home, Tyler dropped his leash by the door and walked straight into the kitchen where Adrian was cleaning up. "Dad," he said, quieter than usual. "They're following me now." Adrian turned, drying his hands. "Who?" "The guards." That same guy from before. He drove past me twice tonight. Didn't say anything, just watched. It's weird. Kinda creepy, honestly. Adrian's jaw clenched, but he kept his voice level. You didn't talk to him? No. Just kept walking. But it's not just tonight. I've seen him outside school too, parked across the street. That last part hit Adrian harder than he let on. School was outside HOA jurisdiction. There was no reason for any of them to be there. This wasn't just harassment, it was intimidation. The next morning, as Adrian was trimming hedges near the front gate, an older neighbor named Mrs. Fletcher, known mostly for her roses and quiet demeanor, strolled by with her Yorkshire Terrier. She paused, looking both ways before leaning in closer. I've seen them too, she whispered. Be careful. Those guards aren't just volunteers. The board doesn't talk about it. But they hired them off books, private firm, not exactly reputable. Adrian raised an eyebrow. How do you know? My nephew's in private security. One of the guys working here used to be part of a group that got shut down for excessive force. They moved counties and changed the company name. Adrian offered a tight nod, masking his concern. Thanks, Helen. That night, he went straight to work. He installed 3 new motion detection cameras around the house, 2 facing the street, and 1 angled at the side yard where a blind spot had become too convenient for unwanted visitors. He synced them to his phone, watching the feed roll in real time, and sure enough, less than an hour after midnight, he caught it. A dark figure moved along the fence line on the east side of the house, slow, deliberate steps. Not walking a dog, not on the sidewalk. They were on Adrian property. He zoomed in, capturing the shape and posture. The man shined a flashlight through the backyard before retreating quietly, back toward the road where the SUV idled with its lights off. The next morning, a bright yellow notice was taped to Adrian's front door. Violation, unsecured items in backyard. Adrian stared at it for a moment, then looked at the footage still playing on his phone. There had been nothing in the yard but a covered grill and a patio chair. No noise, no disturbance, no violation. They weren't just bending the rules anymore. They were making them up. And worse, they were crossing boundaries. Literally. Inside, Adrian transferred the video to a secure drive, backing it up twice. He texted a copy to an old contact, someone who owed him a favor. He didn't say much, just attached the footage with a single line. Keep this safe. Might need it soon, the game had changed, and Adrian was done playing defense. It was a Saturday afternoon, the kind that begged for peace. The sky was a soft blue, the kind that melted into everything it touched, and a breeze drifted lazily through the leaves. Tyler sat on a fold-out chair in their front yard, earbuds in, sketchbook resting on his lap. Max lay beside him, tail twitching, now and then as he dozed. It had become a little ritual on weekends, just him, music, and whatever he felt like drawing. That day it was a comic-style scene of Max as a superhero. Adrian was inside on a work call in his office, half listening while watching the camera feeds in the background. All was calm, until it wasn't. The black SUV rolled up slowly, again. Tyler noticed it out of the corner of his eye but didn't flinch. He didn't want to give them the satisfaction. The passenger window rolled down and the same buzz-cut guard, whose name tag read M. Travis, stepped out, flanked by a second man he hadn't seen before. Bigger, bulkier, eyes hidden behind. "Wrap around shades! Hey!" Travis barked. "What are you doing out here?" Tyler pulled out an earbud. "Sitting, on my lawn." "This is common property," the second man said, scanning the yard like it was foreign terrain. "You're not authorized to loiter here." Tyler furrowed his brow. "This is my property. That's my house," he said, pointing to the front door. "I live here." "You got ID?" Travis stepped closer, smirking like it was a joke only he was in on. "I don't need ID to sit in my own front yard." The two guards exchanged a look, Then something shifted. Travis stepped even closer, his tone tightening. "You've had warnings. Your dad's been difficult. We're not going to keep playing this game." Tyler stood up slowly, trying to keep Max calm, but the dog was already alert, standing between the boy and the men. "Back off," Tyler said. "You're on private property. Leave." "Wrong move, kid," the second guard growled. Before Tyler could react, the larger man lunged forward, grabbing the boy's arm hard, yanking him off balance. Max started barking furiously, spinning in a frenzy of protectiveness. Travis shoved Tyler in the chest as he stumbled, sending him backwards into the flower bed by the porch. Inside, Adrian had already seen it. He moved faster than he had in years. The front door slammed open as he stormed out, phone already recording, in one hand. "Hey, hey!" he roared, his voice cutting through the commotion like a gunshot. The guards froze, caught mid-action, but the damage was done. Tyler was on the ground, scraped elbow bleeding, eyes wide with shock and disbelief. Max stood over him, growling low and ready to lunge. "You touch my son again and I swear to God." Adrian's voice was shaking now, not from fear but rage, controlled, cold, deadly. Travis raised his hands like he was the victim. He was resisting. We had cause. He was on his own property. Adrian stepped between them, shielding Tyler with his body. "And I've got the whole thing on camera, from 3 different angles." Travis glanced up, eyes flicking toward the corners of the house where Adrian had mounted the new cameras. His confidence flickered. The other man backed up, clearly realizing they'd gone too far. Adrian didn't move. "You just assaulted a minor on private property without cause. That's felony battery, trespassing, and intimidation. Do you even realize what you've done?" The men didn't respond. They retreated without another word, piling into the SUV and speeding away as Max barked after them from the sidewalk. Adrian knelt beside his son, inspecting the scrape on his arm and the shaken look in his eyes. "You okay?" Tyler nodded weakly, blinking back the sting of both pain and embarrassment. "I didn't do anything, Dad. I swear." "I know," Adrian said softly, gripping his shoulder. "I know you didn't." They sat in silence for a moment, the chaos leaving behind only the sound of the breeze and Max's low whine. Then Adrian stood, his entire posture shifting into something more calculated. He wasn't just angry, he was focused now. He helped Tyler to his feet, looked toward the street, then toward the camera still recording overhead. "They crossed a line," he said, more to himself than anyone else. "They think they're untouchable." He pulled out his phone again, not to record this time, but to make a call. As it rang, he muttered, almost too low to hear, "You just messed with the wrong family." Adrian didn't shout. He didn't storm into the HOA office or post a furious rant online. Instead, he walked back inside, poured himself a glass of water with hands that didn't tremble, and dialed a number he hadn't used in months, but had kept pinned to his favorites list for a reason. It rang once. "Sheriff Wallace," came the deep voice on the other end. "They finally did it," Adrian said calmly, stepping into his home office and closing the door behind him. There was a pause. Then, "They touched your boy?" Adrian nodded, though the sheriff couldn't see it. "Caught it on camera, everything. One grabbed him, the other pushed him into the bushes. He's got scrapes. He's rattled." A shift in tone. "I'm on my way. We've been ready." Adrian glanced at the monitors on his desk, watching the footage rewind to the exact moment the guards lunged. He didn't even flinch as he pressed send, dispatching a copy of the video straight to the sheriff's secure line. "Be sure to bring your deputy with the background check access," Adrian added. "I've got a hunch about one of them." "You got it. We'll be there in 10. 15 minutes later, the quiet neighborhood didn't look so quiet anymore. The deep rumble of county SUVs echoed down the cul-de-sac, shattering the silence like a war drum. 4 patrol cars flanked the front of the HOA's small on-site security office, lights spinning in tight flashes of red and blue. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, phones already recording, wondering if someone had been shot. Adrian stood, calmly on his lawn with Tyler beside him, bandaged, pale but standing tall. Max sat protectively between them. Sheriff Wallace emerged from the lead vehicle, broad-shouldered and gray-haired, with the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to raise his voice to command a room. Or a street. "Where are they?" he asked. Adrian pointed toward the security shed. "Still inside, probably trying to figure out how to spin it." Just then the door opened and Travis stepped out with an exaggerated limp and a dramatic scowl. "That kid attacked us," he called. "We've already filed an incident report with the board. That family's been nothing but trouble. Save it," Sheriff Wallace snapped, stepping forward. "You're not dealing with the board now. You're dealing with the law. ID, now." Travis hesitated. "I don't have it on me." "Funny," the sheriff replied, signaling to a deputy. "You had it when you shoved a minor into a bush. Pretty sure you had it when you followed him home last week." The deputy stepped forward, scanning both guards with a practiced eye. He pulled a tablet from his belt and began tapping through a search program. The second guard, silent until now, looked uneasy. When the sheriff turned to him, he mumbled, "I left mine in the car. The..." Deputy looked up. "Name?" "Mark Devon." The tablet beeped. The deputy's face changed. "Sheriff," he said carefully, turning the screen. "We got something." Sheriff Wallace took a long look. Then his eyebrows lifted. Well, well. Mr. Devon here was discharged from private security detail in Duval County for excessive force. 3 incidents, 1 under investigation for assaulting a civilian during a wrongful repossession. Travis stepped back. "That's not on record. That's expunged." "Not from our system," the sheriff said coolly. "You really thought no one would run your names?" He turned to Adrian, offering a quiet nod of reassurance. Then to the 2 guards. "You are now under investigation for battery, trespassing, and unlawful detainment. I suggest you don't run." Deputies flanked them quickly, and while no cuffs were snapped on just yet, the message was loud and clear. The game had changed, and these weren't security guards anymore. They were suspects. Adrian exhaled slowly, watching the fear settle behind Travis's eyes. The HOA might have thought they were playing with power, but Adrian had just shown them what real authority looked like. And this was only the beginning. The morning after the sheriff's visit, the neighborhood buzzed with hushed conversations, forwarded texts, and barely hidden glances. No one was sure exactly what had happened, but everyone had seen the flashing lights, and some had heard the yelling. Inside Adrian's home, however, the mood wasn't chaotic. It was focused, calm like the eye of a storm. Sheriff Wallace sat at Adrian's dining table, glasses low on his nose, flipping through a printed copy of the HOA charter Adrian had retrieved from public records. The document, like most legal agreements, was bloated, with dry language and hidden clauses. But Adrian, with his years of courtroom experience, had already highlighted the parts that mattered. "Right here," he said, tapping a paragraph mid-page. "Private security is permitted, but only if the company is registered with the state and carries current liability bonding. Want to guess what we didn't find when we ran their licensing yesterday?" Wallace's lips curled in a grim smile. "No bond, no license, no paper trail that holds up." Adrian leaned back. "Which means every enforcement action they've taken is null and void. Every warning, citation, confrontation, illegal. And the HOA board signed off on it," Wallace added. "They're the ones who hired these guys." At that moment, Adrian's phone lit up with a message from a neighbor, Mrs. Kim, the quiet woman 2 doors down. "I saw what happened. My grandson was chased off his scooter last month by that same guard. I didn't say anything because I was scared. Do you need a statement?" Adrian showed it to Wallace, who gave a slow nod. "They're not just overstepping. They've been doing it for months." That afternoon, the snowball began to roll. One by one, neighbors began coming forward. A teenage girl recalled being followed on her evening jog and warned not to run too close to the fence. A retired couple admitted they were threatened, with fines for feeding birds in their backyard. A single mother said she once caught Travis photographing her kids from his car. None of them had dared to speak out before. Fear, intimidation, and resignation had kept everyone quiet, but not anymore. Word spread fast, especially after Adrian released the footage of the altercation, complete with timestamp overlays, clear angles, and even audio, to a local neighborhood watch group online. It didn't take long for it to catch fire. By evening, the video had been shared hundreds of times on local Facebook groups. A well-known community blogger picked it up, dubbing the security firm a rogue militia in khaki. Then came the media. Van from a local news station parked outside the neighborhood. A reporter knocked on Adrian's door, polite but eager. "Sir, we saw the footage. Would you be willing to speak on camera about what happened?" Adrian hesitated only a second before nodding. "Yes, but we're not just talking about what happened to my son. This is about everyone who lives here. They've all been bullied, and it's time someone stood up." Later that night, as Adrian watched the interview play out on the evening broadcast, he noticed something he hadn't seen before: hope in his neighbors' faces. They weren't just watching from behind curtains anymore. They were standing, in their driveways, talking openly, connecting. The HOA had ruled with fear, but fear was fading fast, and now the truth was pouring out. The courtroom was silent, save for the shuffling of papers and the occasional click of a pen. Adrian sat at the plaintiff's table, a calm but unshakable presence. He wasn't wearing a suit for show. This was his battlefield, and he knew exactly how to fight. Across from him, the HOA's attorney looked worn out already. Two of the board members had failed to appear. One had resigned the night before via a nervous email to the neighborhood mailing list. Another had stepped down after her own husband reportedly confronted her in their driveway. "You let that near our kids?" Adrian pressed charges, not just for the assault on his son, but for harassment, emotional distress, and violations of property rights. The civil lawsuits stacked one after another like dominoes, each backed by new witnesses and neighbor statements. Tyler's footage alone had been submitted as irrefutable evidence. With Sheriff Wallace's full cooperation and the state licensing board already investigating the rogue security firm, the case was airtight. Within days, the security company, formally listed as Clearsight Community Safety, LLC, was slapped with multiple citations. Improper licensing, unlawful detainment, and failure to maintain state-mandated insurance were just the beginning. When word got out that one of their guards had a prior assault record, their operating license was suspended. By the end of the week, the county had issued an official ban. Clearsight was prohibited from conducting any business within the jurisdiction. Their sign disappeared from the HOA office overnight, but the fallout didn't end there. Sheriff Wallace stood behind the podium at the county courthouse, cameras flashing around him. A modest press conference had turned into a full-blown media event, thanks to the viral footage and rising community anger. He adjusted the mic, scanning the small crowd of reporters, residents, and curious onlookers. "Let me be very clear," he began. "There is no special badge that allows someone to put their hands on a child, intimidate families, or enforce personal agendas with fear." He paused, letting the words settle. This community was failed by its leadership, failed by a board that chose intimidation over communication, and failed by a company that had no legal right to operate here in the first place. That ends now. Adrian watched from the sidelines, arms crossed, a quiet satisfaction simmering just beneath the surface. He hadn't done this for revenge. He did it because no one else had the strength or the tools to push back. After the conference, a reporter approached him again. "Mr. Calderon, do you have anything to say to other families who might be facing similar abuse from their HOAs or local security?" Adrian thought for a moment, then looked directly into the camera. Know your rights. Record everything. And don't let fear keep you quiet. Bullies only win when good people stay silent. The clip made the rounds on social media again that night. Some even began calling Adrian the HOA Avenger, a nickname that made Tyler laugh harder than he had in weeks. The neighborhood wasn't perfect now, but it was healing. New board elections were scheduled, this time with public oversight and full transparency. Neighbors who had once been strangers were now talking, organizing, watching out for each other. A community was forming, this time built on trust, not fear. And Adrian? He finally got what he wanted most. Peace. The spring air felt different, cleaner somehow. The tension that once lingered in the neighborhood like a low-grade hum had all but disappeared. Lawns still got mowed, dogs still barked, and kids played in the street. But now, there was something new in the atmosphere. Trust. Adrian sat on the front porch, coffee in hand, watching Tyler shoot hoops in the driveway with a few neighborhood kids. It had taken time, therapy, quiet conversations, a few emotional nights, but his son was healing. The fear in his eyes was gone. In its place was something stronger, deeper. Confidence. "Nice shot," Adrian called, as Tyler nailed a clean three-pointer. The boy turned with a grin that made Adrian's chest swell with quiet pride. There were still reminders. The security camera above the garage, the slightly thicker door lock, the sheriff's number still pinned to the fridge. But these weren't signs of paranoia. They were signs of boundaries, of a lesson hard-earned. The HOA had gone through a full restructure. New board, new bylaws, mandatory transparency. The community now held open meetings in the rec center. And Adrian, though he never sought power, was asked to join the oversight committee. He declined politely. "I didn't stand up to take control," he told one neighbor. "I stood up so no one else had to." One afternoon, while trimming the hedges, a familiar voice called out from across the yard. It was Mrs. Kim, holding a Tupperware of dumplings and smiling warmly. "You brought this neighborhood back," she said. "Thank you." Adrian smiled. "We all did. We just needed someone to light the match." Later that evening, sitting with Tyler on the porch swing, the two watched the sun dip behind the houses. For the first time in a long while, it felt like home again. "Dad?" Tyler asked, his voice soft. "Do you think it's really over?" Adrian looked out over the quiet street, thoughtful. "For now," he said. Then, with a wry smile, he added, "But peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of justice." Tyler tilted his head. "What does that mean?" Adrian gave his shoulder a gentle squeeze. "It means I sleep easy, son, because I always keep the sheriff on standby." They both laughed quietly, the porch creaking beneath them. And in the golden stillness of a calm, reclaimed neighborhood, father and son sat side by side, finally at peace, but never unprepared. If you enjoyed this video and want to see the next part, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated. See you in the next one. Your support means the world.